Welcome to Psychologist Talks. On today's short, I'm talking about this notion or this adage of where's your cup? And this is something I created with a client that seemed to be helpful, so I figured I'd offer it here. Now, the idea is there's a cup in our lives, and within this cup resides some sort of liquid. Easiest one is water, right? Water is life, nourishes us. It's something we need every day. And we fill this cup over our lifetime with positive things that are productive. We internalize things, our values, our self-worth, and it's something to which we can return and remind ourselves of when things are really tough, when we find ourselves in a desert. Now, I want to differentiate this real quick. I know there's this sort of imagery or metaphor of like a cup filling up in a not so productive way, right? Like we only have a certain size of a cup, and that size of the cup varies day to day. And then life is the faucet that turns on and water's flying out of it. And depending on how quickly the water's flowing and the size of our cup, we might overflow. We might find ourselves unduly stressed. And I think that's a useful metaphor, useful imagery just as well. But we're talking about more of like a nourishing cup, not like a day-to-day stress overflowing cup. We're talking about one that, this is going to sound bad, it's like stale water because it exists over the course of our lives, which wouldn't be very tasty, but I promise it's tasty. So maybe it's not water, maybe it's something else nourishing that has a huge shelf life. But the idea is that, again, over time, our experiences, we begin to fill this cup with things that nourish us. And, we might not drink from it very frequently when things are going well, but we certainly can benefit from drinking from it and being nourished by it when things are not going so well. Again, when we find ourselves in a desert and without water. Now, there's a couple things that kind of come up that I work through with clients of like when I say, hey, where's your cup? One, unfortunately for some folks, the cup is not very full, or this sort of canister or canteen is not very full. And this often happens because challenging things, traumas and adversities in our lives have often prevented us from pouring many things into the cup. And sometimes we, in a very self-defeating fashion, do not allow or do not personally ourselves pour things into the cup. We're not as intentional as we could be in seeing and finding and internalizing the things that are nourishing for us. In this case, the work is often like, well, let us at least try to drink from the cup. And when you are doing a little bit better, we need to find ways to fill this cup a little bit more, either with productive things in the present, or sometimes when, especially with like trauma and adversity, when we go to the past, they have labeled things as not being worthy of the cup when indeed they could have been. It's kind of narrative psychodynamic work of like working through the past and making sure not just that we're analyzing the not so productive stuff, but we're actually finding more productive things to pour into and fill this cup so that when we find ourselves in the desert, it'll have a little bit more water this time. Scenario number 2 is sometimes the cup just straight up disappears. It's like, where's the cup? I don't know where the cup is. What do you mean you don't know where the cup is? It was here last week. What do you mean? Where'd it go? And these are really interesting cases because, maybe the cup still wasn't terribly full. I mean, these things can coexist with one another. But it's really interesting when the cup is actually quite full, but when things are hitting the fan, the cup is just nowhere to be found. Depression's kind of notorious in this front of like, there is no cup. I don't know even what you're talking about. But it's like, I promise you there's a cup somewhere. And often what the problem here is like they weren't as aware and they weren't really as intentionally noticing the cup ahead of time to know that there even is a cup in their life, that this is a thing that is even needed. Right? It's not like I know there's a cup and there's not much in it. It's like I didn't even know there needed to be a cup, so obviously when I need a cup of water, it's gone, right? I didn't prep for the desert. And so the work becomes like, oh crap, like, hey, I know very important to me is like, we need to understand what's going on for you and give validity to and explore and observe and learn from the not so good that's coming up. And simultaneously though, we do need to look for this cup because we need something that nourishes you while we're in this desert. We've got to learn how to exist in this desert because more than likely we're going to be back here again and we need to have a little bit of water with us. Option number 3, but kind of course number 3 that kind of sabotages, hey, where's your cup, is people will actively pour the cup out. Like the cup's right there, right? And again, doesn't say like how much is in the cup, but they will convince themselves that the water is actually oil. It's like, hey, where's your cup? It's right here, but none of it's true. None of it's accurate. It's poison to me. It was all a lie anyway, right? And so this sort of invalidation or shame, like I'm not worth the cup, I'm not worth the water. And so people just dump it right out in the desert, right into the sand, cannot be consumed again. And these are particularly painful experiences to be like, hey, where's your cup? It's like, it's right here. I don't want to drink out of it. In fact, there's nothing in it now. And a lot of this requires a kind of a different version of healing and really reinforcing how solid what the cup is in the cup ahead of time. It speaks to that there is a latent invalidity, to the cup, the contents of the cup, before things really hit the fan, if they are so easily discarded. And so there's a reinforcing, not just making sure that it's full, but really making sure it's like, dude, for real, this is water. Yeah, but no, this is water. But what about, that says that, but that's, it just led to destruction. I messed that up. I'm really ashamed of it. It's still water. Like, maybe we can make it tastier. Maybe we can fortify it with some minerals over time. But dude, it's still water, right? So where's your cup? Stop pouring the damn cup out. It's one of those sort of moments. Again, not so aggressively, but sometimes more playful with some of the folks I work with. Is like, stop it. What are you doing? So hopefully this is helpful, right? If you find yourself in the desert, you can ask yourself, like, where's your cup? And what are you doing with that cup? Can you drink from it? Not because the things that aren't going well are inconsequential and don't require some sort of processing or some sort of solution, or maybe you can't even see the solution and you've got to kind of work your way through it, or some sort of grief. It's just that it has these tasks have to coexist with a cup from which we drink. Some sort of nourishment when we are in a desert. And so, be sure you're tending to your cup. That while you might be working on problems in your life, there is still time and energy invested in what fills and nourishes your cup, so that when you're in a desert, you have something to drink. So hopefully this has been helpful and interesting. And as always, stay curious.